Welcome to the Radio Creme Brulee channel. So this video is somewhat based on an article that I penned for the Radio Creme Brulee site roughly around 15 years ago. And some of you are probably wondering why I'm rehashing something from that long ago. And I think the reason I'm doing this is because it is as relevant today as it was 15 years ago, with some minor changes. So, judging by the title of this video, you've probably figured out that this video is devoted to Manchester band Take That. They were formerly a five-piece with Jason Orange and Robbie Williams. They split up at the peak of their fame in 1996. They returned as a four-piece in 2006 after a successful documentary, followed by a successful stadium tour, followed by a bunch of number one albums and a few number one singles. To say this is the comeback against all odds and probably one of the biggest comebacks in music history, in pop music history, would be quite the understatement. So it's roughly about 20 years since they came back as a four-piece. And this weekend, they are embarking on a stadium tour across the UK and Ireland. Let that thought marinate in your head. These guys are now in their mid-50s, and they are embarking on a stadium tour. We all know that the shelf life of a boy band, which is how these guys started out, is meant to be 5 or 6 years, and that's pretty much it. Any future endeavors by a boy band revolve solely around nostalgia and flogging the past repeatedly on stage. We all know that nostalgia has a shelf life. There's only so much you can milk it. Nostalgia with novelty is probably a huge step up, but it guarantees nothing. And the rules propelling Take That back into our public consciousness could apply today. Even though we don't live in a musical monoculture era, I think a lot of those rules could still apply. And so the idea behind this video is going through the 5 or 6 rules or ingredients, or the key ingredients that are necessary to propel a musical comeback. Rule number 1, quit while you are at the top. Take That band member Mark Owen once said in an interview that they would always quit at the top. And there is, that idea is guided by a very sound rationale. Because when you are at the top, the only place to go is down. And to recover from that is very, very difficult. When you quit at the top, this notion of absence makes the heart grow fonder actually applies. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, there is a window of opportunity between the syndrome of absence makes the heart grow fonder and out of sight, out of mind. Do not miss it. Take That took 10 years to come back. It was good. It was just enough time to where their fame and success wasn't too far back in the distant past. And it was also long enough to where the media attacks on them and their relatively lackluster success as solo artists, with the exception of Robbie Williams, who ended up scoring the second largest recording contract of all time. And that divergence in fortunes between Robbie Williams and the rest of his band members on Take That, I think made them quite a punching bag for the media. And trying to stage a comeback in the midst of that would have seemed desperate, and I think they would have fallen on their faces. So stepping away from the limelight just long enough to where the media frenzy had died down, but not too long to where they'd been forgotten entirely, was the sweet spot. There's another angle to this, and that has to do with their age. They were all in their 30s when they came back for Take That Chapter 2, which meant they were not too old to be playlisted by BBC Radio 1, which is by far the most potent opinion shaper of public opinion when it comes to pop music in the UK. And for Take That to break through to a younger generation, they absolutely needed to be on BBC Radio 1. If not, they would have just been labeled as a legacy act, which happens to most acts that come back after a long time or reunite. Take That was smart. They came back just at the right time. But if they hadn't been picked up by BBC Radio 1, things may have panned out very, very differently for them. They were still young enough, they still looked great, and they were perfect for the BBC Radio 1 demographic. The next rule: do not make a mockery of yourself. Keep your dignity, it is priceless. I'm guessing the period after Take That first split in 1996 must have been a very difficult one for the members of the band, with the exception of Robbie Williams. Robbie Williams ended up being quite the international superstar. He was popular everywhere outside the US. Gary Barlow, who everyone tipped to be the next Elton John or the next George Michael, did not have the successful solo career most people would have expected him to have, given that he was the primary songwriter for Take That. He did not reinvent himself, which I think was an absolute prerequisite for him, or anyone for that matter, going solo. If the public can't tell you apart from the band that launched you, that is a problem. And that is very, very difficult to go from that to being a successful solo star. And I think that's where Gary Barlow, despite being a fantastic songwriter, wasn't able to have his Take That success translate to solo stardom. And that made him a punching bag. The media played him against Robbie Williams, and I imagine it was an incredibly humiliating experience for him. Howard Donald from Take That became a DJ. Mark Owen had some success, but nothing on the scale of Robbie Williams or even Gary Barlow for that matter, and I think he eventually ended up getting dropped from his record label. So being mean-spirited or fighting back at the media or being rebellious, I'm sure that was very, very tempting for them. But they just kept a healthy resilience, of healthy silence, which I think served them incredibly well. At times they were labeled as Andrew Ridgeley's, which is a little comparison to Andrew Ridgeley from Wham, one half of the duo, which also included George Michael, responsible for timeless classics. But even there, George Michael was the primary songwriter, and Andrew Ridgeley, the second half of Wham, always found himself being the punching bag of the media. Keeping your dignity is priceless. That way, when you come back, you don't come back with any baggage. And that is something all the members of Take That could sort of put their hands on their heart and say they did well on that front. The next rule: get the sequence of events for your comeback right. Take That did this very, very well. They used the documentary to assess interest and revive happy memories. Next, they staged their comeback stadium tour, a sold-out tour. This probably made BBC Radio 1 absolutely powerless in their hands and probably forced their hand to make sure that their new songs got the playlist, radio playlist treatment on BBC Radio 1. And they did all of this within a year of coming back. They capitalized on momentum. They didn't let it die. They moved quickly. And that speed probably had a lot to do with their success and their crossover to a second generation of fans. The last rule is this idea that history is more powerful than you think it is. Embrace it, don't resist it. Despite their success as a four-piece, their rise to prominence was as a five-piece with Robbie Williams. Bringing him back into the fold for the Progress album was a masterstroke. That album might also be their best post-reunion album. They also reinvented their formula. They moved away from the adult alternative sound of the Beautiful World and Circus albums, the first two albums since their return as Take That. And they moved into something that sounded more up-tempo and a bit new wave-ish. And they had Stuart Price holding the production reins. To say it worked like a charm would be an understatement. That album may have spawned some of the finest material Take That has ever recorded. That was 15 years ago. Well, 16 years ago. And it looks like the flame still burns incredibly well. 15 years later, these guys are playing stadiums. This is how you do a comeback. And I'm incredibly happy for them, even though they're down to a three-piece featuring Gary Barlow, Mark Owen, and Howard Donald. The fact that they can actually sell out stadiums at this age is such a testament to their songwriting and back catalog that has truly endured. Now, it's worth mentioning that Take That was created and put together as the British alternative to New Kids on the Block. The New Kids on the Block also attempted a comeback with new material. None of it lit the charts on fire, and they're still, for all intrinsic purposes, a nostalgia act. And I mean no disrespect to them at all. But I think what Take That has pulled off is brilliant. And they've done this without any promotional footprint in the US. Yes, back in the day, they did get some radio airplay with Back for Good. It did become a US top 10 single. But they pulled this all off without the US. Imagine how much bigger this could have been if they'd been given radio airplay in the 90s and beyond in the US. The US is, this is a mathematical reality, but it is the largest consumer market for recorded music. That's just a mathematical fact. Unfortunately, the gatekeepers of the US music market seem to think that this mathematical reality makes them the arbiters of quality and the arbiters of tastes. They've clearly gotten it wrong, and there is a world of pop music outside the United States. And I'm hoping people that tune into our radio station understand that. Anyway, did we miss anything in our assessment of Take That's comeback? If we did, please share those ideas in the comments below. And if you get a chance, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Take care. Bye.